Awesome. All right. So welcome everyone. Where we're going to be kicking off is on page 72, Into Action. And what we're really diving into is step 5. And I love to point out, like, the chapter that kicks us off into step 5 is Into Action, which it's like, wait a minute, what was all that inventory? Was that not action? Oh man, it sounds like I need action and more action. It's almost like this is an action-based program, am I right? So we've got all this action. And I like to point out, it's into action, not into thinking about it, not into simply talking about it, not into like expressing my grand ideas about it. No, but into action, into doing. And so what are we doing in the 5th step? Well, Into Action on 72 kicks off with, having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? So up to this point, we've got the inventory. What are we now doing? It says we have been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. So what it's saying is the point of what we're trying to do. So when it says we've been trying to get a new attitude, the new attitude that we are trying to get is a spiritual awakening, is a spiritual experience. That's the goal. That's the point. That is the solution to my alcoholism. And when it says, and to discover the obstacles in our path, what we're trying to do is discover the things in me that are blocking me from that connection. So that connection is there, but I'm just blocked. I'm blocked by my resentments. I'm blocked by my fears. I'm blocked by my guilt and my shame. I'm blocked by my 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. I'm blocked. And so the 4th step, it begins to shine a light on what is going on what is being blocked. And in the 5th step, that we are just gonna laser beam focus that light. And that's what we're trying to do. Now, I'm going to skip ahead a couple lines. I'm not going to be able, because my hope is we get through all of step 5 today. Next week, we'll talk about the quiet hour and step 6, and maybe the next week, step 7, which is always contingent on how well I do things, which, as we know, is variable at best. So that's what I'm aiming for, and we shall see how much I miss that mark, which is, common for me. But we're going to skip down a little bit where it talks. So it's talking about, like, in the purpose of inventory, we've begun to see some of the stuff that's blocking us. And now these are about to be cast out, taken from us. And it says this requires action on our part. Oh man, it's almost like this chapter is called Into Action or something. When do I get a break? Spoilers, that break is the quiet hour. We got a whole hour. All right, so it says, which will mean we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects. And so when we talk about that word admit has a number of definitions. Now, the one that I think most of us and myself are the most familiar with is a bit of a confession. And so I think the 5th step is a bit of a confession. And that's not to say that it isn't, but I always joke, like, to admit, right? I've got to admit that I stole your car, I slept with your husband, and I peed on your carpet. And this is the 2nd time I'm making this joke today. I would never do those things. It was linoleum. That's the joke. When we get to the 9th step, what I do is I do a mock amend for doing all those things. It's a hoot, and it comes full circle. But I think that's that admit. It's a confession. But another way to look at that word admit, there's a lot of our friends from Atlanta today, or the Georgia area. So let's say we all got tickets to watch the Falcons play, the Atlanta Falcons. Go sports, right? And so let's say, and some of you are like, please don't subject me to sports. What did I do to deserve this? I'll do a 5th step. Don't make me watch sports. And some are like, yeah, sports. So if sports aren't your jam, just imagine whatever concert or whatever event you're so excited for. And each and every one of us would be given a ticket. And on that ticket, it says admit one. So another way to look at the word admit is not a confession, but a letting in of another person, a letting in of God, and a letting in of the awareness of my true self. And that's another way to look at the word admit. And when it says to another human being, one of the things I always find it so helpful to emphasize is that it is another human being. My first ever sponsor, she spoke about this, where it's like there's two types of people. There's the people that stand on the pile of mess and wreckage and they're like, yeah, I did that. Woo! And that was her. And that was very much her personality. Like very much like, yeah, I wrecked everything. Woo! And then there's my personality, which is hiding under the pile of mess with deep shame. And I can't believe that I did this. But when we use the phrase another human being, it points to the true humility that we only get to experience when we share our fifth step with God, ourselves, and another human being. That true humility that I'm no better than you, that I'm no worse than you, that equality. And for this little drunkie, I am dependent upon God. And that's what we're talking about. And so, and often, yeah, it's that thing where it's like, why do I have to tell God? God already knows. I don't want to, and it's like, it's an inviting in. And yes, we already know, but if you know what it's like to do your first ever fifth step, and maybe you didn't, and some of you guys know when I work with my sponsees, man, I handhold. I'm sitting with them for a bulk of their inventory. You know what I mean? So I know almost all the stuff by the time we get to step 5. But you know that experience when you shared your inventory for the first time and you're getting that feedback and you're seeing yourself in a whole new way, in a way that we never saw ourselves before. And so again, it is that inviting in. And it goes on to say, this brings us to the fifth step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. Now, in the fifth step, as it was written in the first paragraph on 72, it says the exact nature of our defects. As the fifth step is read on the preceding chapter on page 59, it says exact nature of our wrongs. So what is the difference? And then if you take a gander at step 6 and step 7, it talks about defects and it talks about shortcomings. Now, I'll talk more about this in the coming weeks, but I just want to touch upon it. My defects of character, the exact nature of my defects, the exact nature of my wrongs, my shortcomings are all the same things. And I point that out just because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me to become aware of one thing in step 5 and then be willing for something different to go in step 6 and then ask for a third separate thing to be removed in step 7. There is a logical flow that I become aware of the things that are blocking me in step 5. And in step 6, I then become willing for them to be taken from me. And in step 7, I ask for them to be removed. And I point that out just because it's simple. And that's what I found. I found the more that I do this, the more simple it is. And that, listen, for somebody like me who wanted to overcomplicate the heck out of all of it, that was its own little miracle. So what I love is at the second half of page 72, the book does what the book does, which is meets me where I'm at. So the book Alcoholics Anonymous is not expecting me to be like, oh boy, a fifth step. I can't wait. Sharing the contents of my inventory and those deep dark secrets with another human being? I would love to. I'm an open book. No, at no point. And I don't mean to, call anyone out, but not that you guys, but people who would sit on their fourth step, we might have heard of somebody doing that one time. We've never done that. But that sitting on the fourth step, why would any person sit on their fourth step? Because they're afraid of step 5. Because I'm afraid. I'm afraid of this process. And what am I ultimately afraid of? I'm afraid that I'm going to be real for the first time in my life. I'm afraid that I'm going to express the truth about who I am. And some of it is ugly. And what's going to happen is you're going to reject me. And it is going to confirm the belief that I have at base, at root, that I am broken and unworthy. And this is also how we know the 12 steps are experiential, because that's not what happens. What happens is freedom. But the book is meeting me in my fear. The book is meeting me in my reluctance. The book is meeting me in my, why do I gotta? What's the point? Because it says, this is perhaps difficult, especially discussing ourselves with another person. We think we have done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves. It's like, I see it. I don't need to take it to somebody else. I've done well enough. And this is where the book takes us where we need to go. So meets us where we're at and takes us where we need to go. And I always point out, if that's what this book can do, is it not possible that that is what the God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe, of your own understanding can do as well? Meet you where you're at in the here and now and take you where you need to go. And here's where we need to go, it says. There is doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. What that means is me trying to sort out me does not work. Eileen talks about, I can't see the label from inside the jar. You know what I mean? I'm stuck in me and I can't see what's going on with me. I need somebody else to help point it out, to illuminate so I can see the truth. And again, it's going to meet us where we're at. It says, many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We will be more reconciled into discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. And I just love that line because, bless you, because it is one of, I know it's the worst when I do that. I'm so sorry. I have the attention span of a gnat. What I love about that line is you could, not that anyone other than Harry Tebow would say that alcoholics are immature, but you could almost kind of feel that inner toddler of, why do I gotta do that? You give me one good reason, and stomp, 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 right? All right, we'll give you one good reason. In fact, the best reason first. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. And that is the truth. If I skip this, if I cut corners on this, I might not be able to stay sober. And that sounds like a warning. And it is. But the warning is truly a continuation of our first step promise. That first step promise is the idea that if I have alcoholism, the time and place will come and I will drink again. And the solution that I need is the spiritual awakening that I deepen and that I grow for the rest of my life. So it's not like, wait, this is brand new information. It's a continuation of the information we were discussing in step one. But I'll tell you, every time I get there, it'll feel like brand new information. What do you mean, right? That's not good news. So the best reason first, the best reason is that if I don't get it all out, if I am not as honest, as fearless as I can be at this moment, then I might not stay sober. And that's what we're here to do. That's what we're here to do. And it goes on, and I want to take us to the top of page 73, where it says, having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. We think the reason is they never completed their house cleaning. They took inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. So even when we do a fifth step, a lot of times, what are the secrets that we hold back? What are the secrets that we don't want to share? Well, it's not usually let me tell you how good I was in this one time I saved a damsel from the train tracks and an evil villain with a mustache and a top hat. I'm not holding back my good deeds. I am holding back the things that I think that make me irredeemable. The things that I think make me subhuman. The things that carry the most shame. And when I hold those back, what happens? I look at shame as this dark sludge or like a black mold. And when it's in the dark, it just grows and grows and grows. And what do I need to do? I need to shine a light on it. And when I shine that light on that secret, what happens is it dissipates and it disappears. And those of us who have shared that deep, dark secret or those deep, dark secrets, We know that to be true. And I won't do this because it's not appropriate, but I want you to know the deep, dark secret that you have, the thing that you think you can't share with any other human being. There is somebody on this Zoom call that's done it. Heck, there's probably somebody that did it last week. And not only that, I've been doing this thing for a while. And I've received, I couldn't even tell you how many fifth steps that I've received that I've listened to. And I want you to know there is not a thing that I have not heard. And and I'm not even saying that as a challenge, but you can come on and try to there's not a thing that I have not heard. And it's a reminder that if I was able to write it down, or I'm trying to avoid writing it down because I'm afraid of sharing it, what that means is that there is a word for it or language to describe it, which means you can't be the only one doing it because we have words to describe it. Now, I'll also point out, if there is a law against it, now you guys would never break the law, you law-abiding alkies, but somebody like me who maybe outskirted the boundaries of society, that's an eloquent way to say broke the law. But and I know nobody here relates, but I want you to know is if there is a law against the thing that you feel that shame around, what that means is that so many people were doing it, the government stepped in and said, hey, cut that out. So I say that in a humorous way to really illuminate that you are not alone. That secret that you don't want to share, you are not alone. And what I want to point out on page 73 of the first paragraph, and I know, I'm trying to fit it all in an hour, and you're like, really, Paige, you're going to make time for this? You betcha. What we have at the top of page 73 are what are known, and by what are known, I mean by me, nobody else calls them this, the Missy Elliot promises. If you're familiar, in the early 2000s, the artist Missy Elliot, she had that song, Reverse It, and in that song, she was singing, you got a big boop, let me search it. I heard the censored version. There was an elephant noise. And without any doubt, she was clearly saying, if you've got a big book, let me search it for clear-cut directions on how to recover. It's weird if you think it's anything else. You should have a look at that. I'm just kidding. But in that song, she would sing, flip down, flip it, and reverse it. And then they would take the lyrics and reverse it. And so that's what we're going to do right here. So this is what happens when I am not fully open and fully honest and fully thorough with my fifth step. It says they only thought they had lost their egoism and fear. They had only thought they had humbled themselves, but they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until we told someone else all their life story. That life story is the fourth step, and those secrets I don't want to share. And so let's Missy Elliot it. Flip down, flip it, and reverse it. So if that's what happens when I hold things back or when I avoid that fifth step, what happens when I'm fully honest, when I put it all out there? Flip down, flip it, and reverse it. I will lose my egoism and fear. I will humble myself. I will learn, and it is an experiential learn, not just be able to Merriam-Webster it, or Oxford English. Those are my dictionary references for the day. Not just dictionary it, but know it in my heart, in my experience. Learned enough humility and fearlessness. That is the result of the fifth step. Now, if you're like, that sounds okay, that's okay. If you're like, well, I don't know about that, don't worry about it. We got some other fifth step promises, but I always want to point out the Missy Elliot ones because I think that's fun, and I'm here for fun and whimsy. And some of you are like, I am not here for fun and whimsy. Stick around, you might. And so it goes on. So the main reason we do that fifth step is so that we can stay sober. But on page 73, it then talks about, hey, what also happens to the inner climate of our lives. I hold on to a secret, and the inner climate gets stormy. And because we're alcoholics, we all know what it's like to have a double life. We all know what it's like to want to present an image that I can't live up to, and to pretend to be somebody that I'm not. And I want you to know, I wasn't pretending to be like an astrophysicist or Marilyn Monroe. I was pretending to be a reasonably functional adult, and I couldn't hit that. I was not grandiose in my acting. It was like, no, I'm a functional adult, and people were not buying it. It was readily apparent they weren't buying it. And what happens is I do these things when I'm drinking. And I cross these lines when I'm drinking. And I come to the morning after filled with that guilt and shame and remorse and that depth of pain and suffering where there's that distance between who I really am and how I'm really doing and the mask that I'm trying to present to you. And I'm in pain. And the more that I do that, the more I'm in pain. And what fixes that pain? A drink. And I'm stuck in that cycle. And what we know is we got to get free of that. And it goes on at the very bottom of page 73, we must be entirely honest with somebody, not with everybody, but with somebody, if we expect to live long or happily in this world. At least one person, I've got to lay it all out. And that's important. But you know what's interesting? I was speaking about those deep, dark secrets, those things that I don't want to share with another human being. If it would be helpful, I could share those things with you now. I could speak freely of them without any concern. And that's the freedom that's on offer. But it's got to start with somebody. I do know a gentleman. He's still sober, by the way, and he's a wonderful man. But his first ever fifth step, it was a speaker meeting that happens in the mornings, and thankfully, because it's the mornings, it's not well attended. But he did his first fifth step at that speaker meeting. So I know. I see the faces of like, what? And hey, we're not saying do that. In fact, I might err on the side of caution with that, but I mean, hey, that'll kick off that fear, no fear after that. But with somebody. And I love that it says long or happily in this world, because I want you to know my life as I had been living it before coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, and to be honest with you, my life as I had been living it even in Alcoholics Anonymous before I fully gave myself to this program, these 12 steps, I could not think of anything worse than a long life the way that I was living it. A short life would have been preferable. And if you know anything sort of about my life, is that things tend to not go according to plan. So I'm the sort of person that I would like try to end it real, and I did actually many a time try to end it real quick. And I'm the sort of person that would live in my alcoholism until like I'm in my 80s. You know what I mean? Just because of the comedic effect of it. Like I don't have that luxury. And so if I want to live free and I want to live happy and I want to live a long life, to get to that place, I need to be fully honest with somebody. It goes on to say, now this is where we transition into who can I take my fifth step to. It goes on to say, rightly and naturally we think well before we choose the person or persons with whom to take this intimate and confidential step. And so the person or persons, it's not quite alluding to the idea of like, do it at a speaker meeting. Maybe don't do that. But what it is alluding to is that there might be parts that we take to somebody like a priest, and we'll talk about those options. But something that is a powerful thing to do. But I also promise you, if you have not done your first fifth step yet, you are going to think I've lost my ever-loving mind. But if you have, you might be like, oh, that could be really freeing. So I just want you to know, if you think I'm insane, that's actually perfectly normal in so many ways. But what you can do is you can take that same inventory to multiple people. So you can do multiple fifth steps with that same inventory to get those multiple perspectives. And again, if this is you're coming up on your first fifth step, it's like hard no, Paige, hard no. But if we've done a couple, it might be a little like, oh, that might be nice, which I will point out that alludes to something. that it is not as bad as I'm afraid it's going to be. You know, it's not like getting the wisdom teeth taken out. Although I'm afraid it's going to be like that, you know. Sorry, I have to go to the dentist next week, and I think I have that on my mind. Anywho, so who do I take my fifth step to? Well, on page 74, it gives us some examples. Now, if you would like, when it says, rightly and naturally we think well before we choose the person or persons with whom to take this intimate and confidential step, you can make a little note in your book to see page 96. Because on 96, it's going to give us the first person that we ought to consider taking our fifth step to. We're going to go to 96, second paragraph. And just to give people time to find 96, second paragraph, the context of page 74 is this book went out to the world, and I live in Calgary, Alberta, and, you know, we didn't have, I can't remember what year, but like in the very early 1940s, there's no Alcoholics Anonymous in Calgary, Alberta. And the first Alcoholics Anonymous, it started with getting a book. And in so many areas, that's how AA started, with just the book. And so if I was a lone alcoholic in Calgary, Alberta, no meetings that I can go to, because they're all in the United States, on the eastern half of the United States. Like there's no meetings I can go to, no Zoom, no intergroup, nothing like that. I would get a copy of this book, and I would read it, and I would see myself in its pages, and then I would follow its directions and continue to see myself in its pages, but I wouldn't have the luxury of a sponsor. I wouldn't have the luxury of somebody who could take me through this work. And so some of the examples given on page 74 are rooted out of that time and that experience of not having someone who's taking me through the steps. So on page 96, it says, suppose now you're making your second visit to a man. So 96, it's talking about working with others, carrying this message. He has read this volume and says he is prepared to go through with the 12 steps of the program of recovery. Having had the experience yourself, you can give him much practical advice. Let him know you're available if he wishes to make a decision, step 3, and to tell his story. And the story that he would tell is step 5. And so the first person that I should at least consider taking my fifth step to is my sponsor. Because that just makes sense. You know, my sponsor is somebody who I'm going to continue to have a relationship with, I hope. It's not a marriage, though. So if you can even change a marriage. So, you know, you can change it. Don't worry. But what I want to do is I want to consider them because I'm going to continue to have a relationship with them, which that means I'm also going to continue this 4 through 9 process in step 10 and in step 11. And so it's going to be helpful to take this inventory to them. They're also somebody who has gone through this process before, and it's going to help us deepen that relationship, and it's going to help them help me navigate my amends. So those amends will be illuminated. So those are some of the reasons why it can be helpful. Now, how I work with sponsees when we go through the 4th step, by and large, I'm sitting with them, and we're going through that 4th step together. And by the time they're done that 4th step, I know all the things. Maybe, you know, save a deep, dark secret or two. Fair enough. But I know they told me all the things. We did the things. I said, write down the things, you know, it's there. And so I'm like, all right, so with your 5th step, if you want, I'm available. And they're like, yeah, of course I'm going to take it to you because I've taken the fear out of it because we've gone this far and I haven't rejected them. So not going to happen. And so that's really helpful. But it does say, but do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult someone else. So who might I want to consult? So going back to page 74, it says those of us belonging to a religious denomination which requires confession must and of course will want to go to the properly appointed authority whose duty it is to receive it. Though we have no religious connection, we may still do well to talk with someone ordained by established religion. We often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem. Of course, we sometimes encounter people who do not understand alcoholics. So who can I consider next? People who are in organized religions. And it's saying, hey, if you happen to be in an organized religion and your religion has a practice of confession, and you want to stay in that religion and deepen, amazing. Go see your I was going to say confession homie. That is not the theologically accurate term with whatever religion you are a part of. That's just my brain summarizing things. My brain likes to summarize. So that is somebody. And when it says they may be quick to see and understand, what we're trying to do is we're trying to see what's blocking us from the higher power of our own understanding, and to get clear of those things. And a religious person might be able to understand that and understand the weight of carrying secrets and understand the importance of that accountability. Where I live in the world, there's a Franciscan retreat center. It's called Mount St. Francis Retreat. And it's a beautiful location. You get stunning views of the Rocky Mountains. And they hold retreats. And one of the other things is the people who live there in community, they also receive the 5 steps of alcoholics and drug addicts from the local recovery community. And there's somebody that locally a lot of people consider and do take their 5 steps to. What I will say, though, is you don't get a whole lot of feedback. So that's just something to consider. And so those are options, right? Again, and then some other options that it gives is it says, if we cannot or would rather not do this, we should search our acquaintance for a closed-mouth understanding friend. Well, in 2026, ta-da, we got friends on the Zoom call. Hi, friends. We have got recovered alcoholics who have gone through this work who will receive your 5th step. Absolutely. And you know, all the way from Tasmania to Atlanta to New Jersey. I'm trying to hit to Calgary. I'm trying to hit all the places. Nova Scotia, all like people from all the UK. I know we got some from Scotland. All over the world, we can do a 5th step with. So those are options. Some of the suggestions are going to be like, hey, there might be times where you might need to delay. Absolutely not. No delaying. No, there's no reason to delay in 2026. You can do your 5th step with almost anyone on the Zoom call. We've got options for you. There are people that will receive your 5th step. I've got sponsees that I throw under the bus all the time. They'll receive your 5th step. They love it. They're aware that God is found under the bus. That's where you're thrown under it and you're like, hey, God's under here too. It's a great thing. So we got some people that will receive your 5th steps. It goes on to say, hey, if that's not an option, maybe a doctor or a psychologist. I don't know what the running rate of psychologists are in your area, but the very bare bones minimum is $200 an hour. And think about how long that your last 5th step was. You know, that's a little out of budget for me. And to be fair, a lot of times they're looking at it from a different angle than we're trying to look at it. And again, could you imagine trying to go to your family physician? Do you get more than 15 minutes? I can't rip off a 5th step in 15 minutes. And I talk fast, you know, like it's not happening. So, and then it says, maybe your wife or parents. Dear God, no. Dear God, no. It goes on to say, but we maybe shouldn't disclose things which will hurt them and make them unhappy. Your mom doesn't need to hear your sex inventory, nor does your spouse. You know, like just throwing that out there. No. But in that paragraph, it talks about we have no right to save our own skin at another person's expense. And even though we don't need to consider what part of my inventory shall I share with mom and dad, that is a beautiful principle to keep in mind, that I don't have the right to get free by causing other people pain, to operate in the world with consideration of others. And it says such parts of our story we will tell to someone who will understand yet be unaffected. And it says the rule. Wait a minute, the rule? I thought there were no rules. What is this? Well, it says the rule, and this is a very important rule, just in life. The rule is that we must, somebody open a window. It's getting a little musty in here. A rule and a must in one sentence. Goodness gracious. We must be hard on ourselves, but always considerate of others. Now, if you're somebody like me, you might take that line and run with it. And it's like, I'm going to beat myself up. No, that is not what we mean when we say being hard on ourselves. We're talking about being rigorously honest about what's going on with us and our consideration of others and our motives. We're not talking about guilting, shaming, belittling, and berating ourselves. Absolutely not. We know that to be true because in Evening Review, it's like, hey girl, that's obviously not quite verbatim. Hey girl, don't wander into morbid reflection. That's not good. But that's not helpful. But to live my life where I'm being very honest about myself and considerate of others. And so we have some options. There are religious people we can take it to. We can take it to our sponsor. And there are so many people all over the world who have recovered that we can take it to. And, you know, hey, I live in a different country, so my medical system is different, but I don't know what your insurance, do you have that on a copay? You know, fifth step on a copay? I feel like that's not how American insurance works. Even though I know it's a little out of my wheelhouse there. So it then goes on to talk about, hey, maybe we got to postpone. Absolutely not. But one of the things that I want to sort of pivot with is we talk a lot about, okay, we kicked it off with why we have to do a fifth step, because I'm going to drink, I'm going to die, and it's going to be super painful if I don't. And then we're speaking about who do I do a fifth step with? Who do I carry this to? But in the book, there's not a lot of information about who do I need to be and how do I need to receive a fifth step. So I want to talk about that a little bit as well, because I think that's important, because there's not as many directions. But, and if you're like, oh, I'm so glad you're not talking about Missy Elliot anymore. Nope, we're going to bring it back and flip down, flip it, and reverse it. Because there's a couple places in these paragraphs where it tells me what to look for in somebody who is to receive that fifth step. And if I flip down, flip it, and reverse it, it's telling me who do I need to be in order to receive the fifth step of others. So I need to be a close-mouthed, understanding friend. Can I keep a confidence? Can I be understanding? And can I maintain that, like, you know, I'm not saying we got to be best buddies, but can I be friendly? Can I be kind? Can I be compassionate? Can I have an understanding? And when it talks about such parts of her story, we shall tell to someone who will understand yet be unaffected. Can I be somebody who is going to understand and be unaffected? Absolutely. It goes on the very bottom paragraph of 74 when it says, we say this because we are very anxious that we talk to the right person. Again, this is who I need to be, the right person to receive that fifth step. It is important that he be able to keep a confidence. That's the second time, that confidentiality. That what is shared with me in the fifth step stays with me. That he fully understand and approve of what we're driving at. And I always, when I work with my sponsees, I'm like, I understand, I approve, let's go, drive, woo, you know, because that I'm here like, let's see what's blocking us. Let's see, you know, what's cutting us off from this power, and let's get free of it. And then it says that he will not try to change our plan. And I can assure you that is the case. I'm not like, hey, let's postpone. Man, can you think of anywhere more painful than, and I'll talk about this here in a sec, but there's nowhere more painful than I've done a fourth step and I'm waiting to do a fifth step. Oh, I'm not leaving anyone in that sort of place. That hurts, you know? And it goes on, it says, but we must not use this as a mere excuse to postpone. And I'm going to skip ahead when it says, he should realize that we are engaged upon a life and death errand. Can I understand as I receive this fifth step that this is a matter of life and death? Not to say, man, we have fun when I do fifth steps. We laugh, we joke, you know, we get tired because it's a lot of work. But can I take it with that seriousness? And then it says, most people approached in this way will be glad to help. They will be honored by our confidence. Can I show up and treat this as an honor? That is important. So how do I receive fifth steps? So again, when we've gone through that, I've sat with them and gone through much of their fourth step with them. So that takes a lot of the fear. And as we sit down, what I do is just as I do with every single time I meet them, I say, it's always good to start with a prayer. Would you like to pray? Would you like me to pray? I don't mind either way, which usually means I'm praying, just if you're wondering. And by the way, they'll lie to me. They're like, I like your prayers. No, you don't. It's just because I do it so much, because y'all are being like, you pray. I'm just kidding. I don't mind. So we kick it off with a prayer. And then, now this is a very difficult thing to describe, but if I get the feeling, if I get the sense that they're really anxious about that deep, dark secret, and I can sort of catch that vibe, which is not like, it's like Paige, I would like numbers and facts, not the vibe. But if I catch that vibe, what I'll do is I'll offer, hey, do you want to rip off the Band-Aid? Do you want to just tell me that thing you don't want to tell me, and then we can get to your inventory? And I offer that. And then what we do is, and I explain with them, is like, you get to, and I'm a big believer in this, you get to read to me everything that you wrote. So if you wrote it down, and this is what I do, I'm not saying you have to, but I'm a big believer, if you wrote it down, I will listen to it. Because, man, I've done fifth steps with people where it's like, oh, that's the same thing, skip over it. And I didn't feel good about that. And so I don't do that with other people. I also, my very first fifth step, we did it one day, 1 week, and then it was like a week in between fifth steps. Like I didn't do it in one sitting. And I will let you know, I did not enjoy that. That was unpleasant. So, and I just have this personality. I am a get her done sort of person. So I will sit all day and we will get it done. If the other person is also okay with that, because I don't just, hey, I'm not just dragging people, but we sit and I like to get it done. And a lot of people feel that way as well. There are some people that need to do it in sections, and I don't mind that, but hey, I like to, hey, let's get it done. And then because we've written so much of it together, I don't have a lot of feedback. So one of the things that I say is like, I will listen to what you wrote, but where we're going to have discussion is not going to be in column 2 or column 3. Where we're going to have discussion is column 4. And that's a helpful thing to put in your pocket, because when somebody's doing their fifth step, they're going to feel and be a little nervous. And as we start reading it, we kind of want to explain the stuff that we're most familiar with, which is column 2. So we're, it's like we're explaining the family lore about great Aunt Margaret, and what happened to her in the 3rd grade. And we kind of get off the bus. And so if we want to keep it on track, I say, hey, where we're going to just read it. If I have questions, I'll ask, but where our discussion's going to be is in column 4. But because I worked with with my sponsees throughout that process, we don't have as much in column 4. That I need to discuss, because I was there and we already discussed it. So this is something that I do. Because, as I'm sure you guys have noticed, I have the attention span of an absolute gnat. What I do is I write what I hear them say their defects of character are. So not what I think and not what I'm like, girl, you got this. No, what they say from their 4th column of resentments. I write what I hear them say their defects are. And I can also get those defects from the 3rd column of fears, and I can get them from the 2nd and 3rd column of sex inventory. That's where I get them from. And about sex inventory, I also write what I hear them say their sex ideal is. And I get that primarily from the 4th column of sex inventory, the what should I have done instead. That's primarily where I get it from. But some of the fears, I can get it from column 4. Like some of them, I can grab it from there. You can tell I've been doing it a little while, and I'm like, I need to stay busy the whole time. And so what do? Well, clearly I publish it. I'm just kidding. Absolutely not. What I do is after the 5th step, if we're meeting in person, I rip it out of the notebook and I give them their list of defects and I give them their sex ideal. If we're not meeting in person, because sometimes that's not feasible, I almost exclusively work with people virtually. I take a picture of it and I send it to them so they have it. And honestly, you'll notice the more you do stuff like that like everyone's is almost the same. You know what I mean? There's a whole lot of similarities. So I'm very careful. I send them the correct one, but I could send somebody else's and that'd be fine too. I don't, but I could. And so then they have that to take with them into their quiet hour, to take into their 6 and 7. And then what I ask them to do is, after they do their quiet hour 6 and 7, is to type out what their sex ideal is, but as a prayer. Now, we spoke about this last week. So to type out their sex ideal as a prayer so that they can send it to me, because I'm not typing it out, and I make it a little pretty. So I use Canva and I make a little thing, and so that they have something that they, in theory, can use. In practice, they don't. It doesn't matter how pretty I make it; it tends to not get used. But in theory, this ideal that they can pray with on a daily basis, that they can meditate with on a daily basis. And then as we get through to the end of their 5th step, what I do is I ask, is there anything else? And that's that prompt for that deep, dark question, or that deep, dark secret that they don't want to share with another human being. Is there anything else? And I found this helpful. I stole this from Robert's Rules of Order, which is how I'm fun and flirty, and just Robert's Rules of Order. In Robert's Rules of Order, there's that where you ask for new business 3 times. And what I started to do, I don't always do, but again, it's vibes, is I always explain what I'm doing as I'm doing it. I'm going to ask you 3 times, is there anything else? And I'll say, hey, is there anything else? And they might share their deep, dark secret if we didn't catch it at the top, or and then, or they don't have, and I say, all right, I believe you, I'm just gonna ask again, is there anything else? And then wait a second, like, cool, I hear you. Is there anything else? And I asked 3 times. When I remember to kind of do that, and it's nothing says fun like bringing in Robert's Rules of Order. Woo! By the way, Robert's Rules, that was his surname, not his first name. That's just a fun fact you didn't need to know. It's just focus. This is why I needed an activity doing the 5th step. I got to write things down, so I'm focused. So that's what I do, and then I reiterate the directions, and I send them away to do their quiet hour and their 6 and 7, because they'll do that in one shot. And so that's how I take people through the 5th step. There's different ways of doing it, but that's the way that feels right for me. Because it's just from my experience of doing a whole lot of 5th steps, and I'll share with you too, really quickly. There are times where there's local treatment centers, and they sometimes, at some of the treatment centers, the clients have to do a 4th step, and they use the check boxes, and it's sort of like, here, go do. And then they have to do a 5th step. And so sometimes they just have like some random names of random people in 12 step locally. And so there's been times I've sat with somebody for this is the first time I'm ever meeting them, and they're sharing with me their 5th step. And they haven't necessarily been thorough in their 4th step because, man, they don't know what they don't know. They weren't taken through, and that's okay. And I just want to address that, because that is a very specific situation, but we can extrapolate that considerate of others in that. So this is a person who, and like, there's one that comes to mind, and she had a tremendous amount of like really serious trauma and some really heavy stuff that had happened. And she's just sharing very honestly and very candidly. And listen, I am a boop, 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 let's get it done. Like, that's how I am. But it wouldn't have been helpful if I had broken it all down and you do that. It would have felt too much. She would have felt attacked. It wouldn't have been helpful. So what I decided I would do was I would pick one thing that I could offer as a suggestion for a 4th column for each thing, just to kind of help her get something, to help her get in the right direction. In the hopes that, hey, if she wanted to continue on, maybe we could go deeper and do some inventory together. And I throw that out. That's how I've done it. But y'all know I'm codependent as heck. So, that's like an extreme situation where I want to keep in mind, I don't want to shut the other person down, and I don't want to slam the door on their vulnerability, but I do want to lead them to that place that we're trying to get, which is to see the truth about ourselves. So now on page 75, so it talks about when we, first full paragraph, it says, when we have decided who is to hear our story, we waste no time to waste. We have a written inventory, and we are prepared for a long talk. So, how do I know if I have been fearless and thorough in my fourth step? I'm aware that my fifth step is going to be a long one. That's how I know. And in the fourth step, it wraps up with like, hey, if we've written down a lot, that's how I know. And again, we explain to our partner what we're about to do and why we have to do it. He should realize that we are engaged upon a life and death errand. And there was a note that life and death of the soul as well as the body. It's not just life and death so that I can be alive, but life and death so I can be free. And it says most people approached in this way will be glad to help. They will be honored by our confidence. It is an honor and a privilege to receive a fifth step. Man, I'm going to say this now. I was going to see about saving it to the end, but I won't remember. I'll just forget about it. And I'm like, man, I was trying to go a little quicker. So what I want you to know is the first time I did my first ever fifth step, that was when I really began to feel a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. But it wasn't until I began to hear the fifth steps of others, to receive the fifth steps of others, that I began to feel a part of humanity, a part of the human race. And I'm going to share something with you. And I'll talk about this in probably 6 and 7 as well. But what happens is I've received, like I said, there's nothing I haven't heard. And I'm not hanging out with drunks in San Quentin. It's just regular old drunks and young drunks, but hanging out with drunks. And there's nothing I haven't heard. And when they share with me their deep, dark secret, what I want you to know is how I feel about them changes. It changes. I love them more. I love them more. I am a fall down failure of an alcoholic. Listen, the best that I can do on my own power is pissing my pants behind a dumpster. Pinkies up because I'm a lady. That is the best that I can do on my own power. I can't do nothing to keep me sober on my own power. I can't do nothing on my own power to overcome my bedevilments, my pain, my suffering, my sense of uselessness on my own power. I can't do anything to overcome that selfishness, self-centeredness. I can't even get free of resentments on my own, or fear on my own, or be the person that I need to be in my relationships on my own. Not anything to say overcome my defects of character. I can't do it. I am a finite, deeply flawed, and frequently wrong human being. I like to say as my sponsor says, but my sponsor doesn't say that. That would be a little mean. But that is who I am, and I love them more. So how might the God of your understanding feel about you? How might that infinite love of the universe feel about you? You see, I'm not doing better than God in the love department. I'm not. Mine is finite. You get me a little overstimulated and I'm getting a little short. You know what I mean? I am flawed. But this is a love that is infinite, and that's what we get to tap into. But I can't tap into that experience until I do it. This whole thing is experiential. God, the spirit of the universe, the creator, your higher power, all of it is experiential, and we get to experience it. So it goes on, page 75, second paragraph, we pocket our pride and go to it. Now this is the only direction on how to do our fifth step, which is, girl, do it. That's obviously not verbatim. Bill Wilson didn't write, girl, do it, snap. He wrote, we pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. And earlier in this study, I was talking about this idea of my defects, the shame, the guilt, the all of it. I was talking very specifically about the shame, but man, there isn't a thing within me that doesn't grow in the dark. It grows in the dark, but it dies in that light. And a number of times in this book, we see this metaphor of God, higher power, the creator, the spirit of the universe as light. God as light. And I find that so powerful. Because just like light, God is not simply what I see. Of course I see light. But God is also the way in which I see. What I mean by that is I've got there's a room to the right of me, and there's no windows and the light's off. And it's in a lot of darkness. But if I go around the corner and I turn on that light, everything in that room has changed, and yet nothing has changed. And think about your experience with inventory. Think about your experience with the fifth step. Everything has changed, and yet nothing has changed. Childhood got better. Childhood didn't change. Family get better. Not perfect, but better. Family didn't change. The jerks on the road, on the freeway, I-90 or wherever you're driving, start to drive better. They didn't change. The jerks at work, they stop being less jerky. They didn't change. How I see them changes. And so God is not simply something that I can see. God is something that I can see. I promise. You invite God, watch for God, you will see God. But God is also the way in which I see, the lens through which I look. Chuck Chamberlain, he wrote a book called A New Pair of Glasses. And that's what God is, that new pair of glasses. Another way to look at it is this power, is this new operating system through which my brain functions. That's what we're talking about. And you might be like, what now? Listen, Paige, are you on Windows 95? Because it sounds like you're on Windows 95. No, I'm on MS-DOS. Get off my back. That is a very obscure joke for very few people. I'm so sorry. All right. And now what follows are the actual fifth step promises. I know I'm going a little bit over. I just want to touch on these. And because these are important. It says, once we have taken the step, withholding nothing, we are delighted. Once I have done this fifth step, let it all out, we are delighted. And that is how we know that this is experiential. Because nobody here saw the fifth step on the board or shared on the Zoom screen and thought, oh boy, I bet I'll feel delighted after that. None of us thought that. But that's our experience. It says we can look the world in the eye, and I don't know about you, but when I got here, I was intimately acquainted with the square floor in front of me. I wasn't looking anywhere in the eye. And that is alluding to the true humility that we get to experience. I'm not this piece of garbage I thought I was. It says we can be alone at perfect peace and ease. And I sometimes do big book bounce arounds. And one of them is where I talk about all the places it talks about loneliness in the book. And we bounce around the topic of loneliness. And you see, the thing about loneliness is I think loneliness is all about my relation to you, to being near you, being near other people. But I felt lonely and alone in a stadium full of other people. I felt lonely and alone in the middle of a relationship. I felt absolutely alone in the middle of an act of intimacy. I know what it is like to feel alone around other people. You see, loneliness, that feeling of alone, is really a sense of disconnect from God. And we know that to be true because right here, it says we can be alone at perfect peace and ease. And what has happened between my conscious apartness and this moment is I've taken some action to clear away the stuff that's blocking me from this power. It goes on to say our fears fall from us. And when my fears fall from me, what that means is I didn't do it. I took a course of action and they fell from me. I didn't overcome them. I become free of them. And that is the pattern that we're going to see in 6 and 7. It says we begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. This idea, though I started with on step 2, which is, okay, maybe Vivian, because we don't believe Paige would have better things to do, but maybe Vivian has better things to do than show up and lie about her experience of God. Maybe these people are telling the truth. Maybe. A bit. What was once an over there idea becomes a here and now experience. And it says we may, and to double down on that, we may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. And hey, I needed that. I needed that if I was going to stay sober. I'm beginning to have that awakening. I can't stop here. I couldn't stay well on one experience. I couldn't stay well on one drink. I can't stay well on one experience. It says the feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we are on the capital B, capital H broad highway. I did a talk about this a little while ago, where it's that broad highway is a synonym for God, where it's like God is not a destination. God is the journey. God is the way. God is the path. And these 12 steps are not a destination, which is rude because I was kind of hoping I could, like spiritual Cabo, just chill out. No, it's like the spiritual I-90. I got to keep going. It says the feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway walking because I got to keep moving. It's into action. It is a way of life. Walking hand in hand with the capital S, capital U, Spirit of the universe. I am not walking alone. And what becomes an idea begins to be an experience. And that is I'm pushing it for time. So it's over to you, Vivian.